Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of Season 3 of the Rule 34 podcast. I'm your host, Jack, joined by my fellow co-hosts,
Dominic Steele.
Giovanni.
Alright, so we are back with another episode. How have you two been?
I have been pretty okay at the moment. I'm currently looking into finding a person to car detail my car because it's a little dirty, admittedly. So I'm gonna get it cleaned up. I don't think it's been cleaned in over maybe a year or so, ever since the previous owner. But other than that, it's been pretty okay. Also, I'm also looking into airbrushing because for those who don't know, I've recently printed a Kubbi bunny figure for Joseph over here. I'm not sure if he's gonna take it in, but I'm gonna do my best to impress. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna look into airbrushing, see how that works out. I don't think it's gonna be easy considering it is a bit of an expensive hobby. But it might look good. Maybe not. Maybe. But who knows? Who knows?
Tell us about your little Smart and Finals adventure this morning.
Yes. So today, I had to go get my car serviced, right? So because for some reason, every time I hit the brakes, my left and right indicators don't work properly all the time. So I went to a repair shop. I got it fixed up. It works now, so it's all Gucci. We needed to go get groceries because we ran out of rice. So we bought rice at a Smartest Finals nearby where I reside. And at that point in time, we were a bit late on the dot and it already hit 11 a.m., which was meant to be the exact time of recording. So we kind of sped it up and got back home good 16 minutes late. So yeah, that was a bit of an adventure. I had to do a little bit of the speeding, so I'm admitting to an illegal crime I've committed, but for the greater cause of this podcast.
Yeah, let it be known, Dom forgot we had podcasts today, because I wish we were recording when Gio called you, Dom, because it was just so funny that he calls you and he's like, "Where are you at?" And Dom goes, "Oh, I'm at Smart and Final," and Gio goes, "What are you doing at Smart and Final? We have podcasts today." And Dom just goes, "Oh, crap." The man forgot, man.
My apologies.
It's all good, though. What an adventure, though. Who knew that grocery shopping could lead to a illegal crime being committed, Dom?
It's not good. Don't commit crimes. I've committed crimes. War crimes. In Afghanistan, you just don't know.
What?
You know what? I was gonna start talking about some stuff, but and obviously I still want to hear how Gio is doing or how he's been, but if you two don't mind, honestly, that's a perfect segue into today's topic. We're talking about grocery shopping, and I don't know where Dom's talking about war crimes in Afghanistan. And I don't think nothing embodies that better than today's topic, which is a review of the television. Would you even call it? It was technically a kids series on Cartoon Network, regular show. Which is funny because, so that's basically the entire plot of the show. Is that well, for the most part, it didn't have how would you say it? It wasn't a continuous timeline of events. I mean, they started getting a continuous timeline of events in the later seasons, but for the most part, when it started off, it was just random events happening each episode. And similar to how Dom went from grocery shopping to war crimes, that show similarly had a lot of moments like that where it started off with maybe a simple goal or task to be completed by the end of that episode, and next thing you know, 100 other things happen and you're just like, how did it get to this point? But so to give a quick synopsis of the show, or more information on it, it's how many members is it? 7 members, right, Dom? 7 members that work at a park?
I think it's 7.
I believe it
So,
is
yeah.
7. 7 people are working at a park. It's Mordecai and Rigby, the main, if you want to call them protagonists of the show. Mordecai is a blue jay. Rigby's a raccoon.
He's a raccoon, yeah.
Yeah. Their boss of the park is Benson, a gumball machine. There's the owner of the house and the park, or son of the owner of the park, Pops. There's Skips, who's an immortal Yeti, right? Is he a Yeti?
I believe so, yeah.
And then there's High Five Ghost and Muscle Man. They all work at this park, and basically how I said earlier, they just work at a park and they're supposed to have simple tasks, and yet each episode it's some of the most out of pocket stuff you've ever seen.
There was also another 8th member, the goat.
Oh yeah, he
I forgot
was
his
an
name.
intern, Thomas.
Yeah, Thomas. He played as a bit of a side character.
He was an intern for the most part, and just getting straight right to it, he ends up turning out to be a Russian spy later in the show.
Yeah, he was pretty much the how would you say it, a secondary antagonist, kind of. Because at first in his debut episode, everyone was confused because it's like, whoa, a new character, like a new implementation. Because I remember watching it first time, I had no idea who this character was, and then later on, I forgot which episode it was, but then we find out his true motives. In fact, he was the bad guy this whole time.
Yeah.
Well, a secondary bad guy, not the main bad guy, but
Yeah, and I think the story was that Russia's parks were terrible, and instead of trying to improve on their parks, they just decided to steal one from America.
Yes.
And so his whole role at that point was basically setting up the transfer of the park, which it's literally what it sounds like. They literally remove the park from the ground with rockets and just start pushing it towards the Russian border. Which the craziest part of that was that if it even crossed an inch over the border, it would have been claimed as Russian property and they couldn't take it back.
These stories.
That's very interesting.
And I think the biggest thing to take away is how you saw my confusion at the start. It's technically a kids show, but yet how Gio was kind of mentioning before we started, it just kind of had a ton of moments where it was very going back to the Parasite review, it was very close to pushing it, there were many moments where you were just are we sure this is a kids show with some of the stuff that happened on it? Because
I think.
Continue, Dom. Continue.
I was gonna say that I remember there was an interview with Quintel, with the creator of Regular Show, and he wanted to personally place a lot of adult content, but he knew that he would violate terms of service with Cartoon Network, which is the reason why there's a lot of small little moments. I'm not sure if you recall some of those moments, when Margaret takes off her shirt. Do you remember that one moment? And then there's another moment where she rides on a bike, to leave the park, and then Mordecai just gets a glimpse. If you catch my drift, it even plays in music in the background, suggestive music when Mordecai catches a glimpse of looking the rear end of Margaret, and I'm thinking to myself, how did this get away with it? And I'm pretty sure they showed weaponry. There was one episode with animatronics, and it showed FBI agents with a minigun, shooting guns, not fictitious weapons,
dude,
actual weaponry.
That animatronic pulled out a Tommy gun at one point.
Exactly,
but
it's just these are weapons, these are guns on a kids show.
And not only that, unlike most kids shows, they didn't shy away from killing people on screen and accepting it, there was some pretty brutal moments on that show where sure, they maybe did it in a cartoonish way, oh my gosh, what was the Garrett Bobby Ferguson, when he explodes, they didn't make it seem he actually they made it cartoonish, but then there was moments I know they're not canon to the storyline, but the Halloween episode where Rigby gets turned into a house and Muscle Man's fighting the wizard, he gets dragged into the forest, and then he shows up on the front at the front door, and when it opens, the guy was basically skinned.
Ooh, that was disgusting.
You remember that, right? Like that's an actual moment in a kids show. Like they did not hold back with some of their content.
It was pretty bad.
And like it's crazy just thinking back and remembering watching this stuff like weekly, you know? Like
True.
I think personally, I don't know if you guys would agree, but this was probably like one of those cartoon shows that really influenced our generation growing up into having the type of humor that we have, you know?
Right.
Cuz like
Definitely.
it was ahead of our, not ahead of our time, but like, you know, like ahead of our age frame, I guess you want to say. Because like when, like how we are right now, looking back on it, we see just how crazy it was. But even then, it was like we watched it and it was like it if you want to put it like, I don't want to make it seem like it was a bad thing, but like it exposed us to like these concepts and ideas in a way that wasn't like how would you put it, like I guess you could say scarring in a way, like, you know, like how we're mentioning the uses of all this stuff, like guns and violence and all that, but it did it in such a cartoonish way that it was still entertaining, but it wasn't like scarring, you know. It wasn't like showing your kid a horror movie, you know, at a young age.
Yeah.
Like it's brutal looking back on now, but it's not as scarring. But sorry, continue, Joe.
I was just gonna say that it made it. How do I say? It made it like seem okay to do. In, I guess, children's eyes, because it is a cartoon, and you don't really expect, like, you wouldn't, like, a kid wouldn't watch, or maybe a kid now with how progressive things have been, but back then when a kid watches a cartoon, they know they just watch it to have fun and not necessarily to learn anything about, like, society or any like kind of like ramifications that could come from watching something like that. It was just for fun. But now it's kind of, there's still some shows out there, but it's not like the same anymore. Because either cartoons are like very what's the word, like very like innocent and naive, you know, like what's that cartoon called? The one with the cats. I don't remember.
The one.
But there's like, yeah, there's like a red cat and a black cat, but they're like humans dressed up as cats, and they do like cat stuff. They're like cat superheroes. I don't know. Anyways,
PJ Heroes, I think it's called.
Maybe, because you have cartoons like that now, and then like on the opposite side of the spectrum, you have, I guess like Rick and Morty. And what else is there? I guess Family Guy still counts. And then The Simpsons is kind of like in between, because they do have like some moments that are out of pocket. But then the majority of the show is kind of still for children, I guess.
Was the show you were talking about that like Ladybug, I think it is? Or is it something different?
I know what you're talking about, but I'm not sure if it is that.
I don't think so, because I think they're cats.
Okay, well, yeah, I get what you're saying, especially because, I don't know. I think, like, a lot of people have made that point where it's like a lot of shows kind of think that they're, that even though, like, I guess it's like a whole thing of, like, how would you put it? I guess, like, misunderstanding your audience, because, like, a lot of the shows, kind of like how Gio's putting it, with the way they're like too innocent and naive, it's like, of course you'd expect that from like a kid's show, but like also at certain points they kind of think of they almost underestimate the knowledge of kids, if that makes sense. You know, like sometimes kids are just a lot smarter than they seem, and I don't know, that's why I think you see like a lot of kids not being as interested in certain shows, because it's like it like, not to put it in a bad way, but like some of them might even feel like certain shows just completely insult their intelligence, you know. Like I don't know what's a show you can claim insult your intelligence really.
I mean, what do you mean by insult your intelligence?
Like in the way of like almost in a way of how would you put it, like dumbing certain things down, you know, which I know a lot of people are like, well, it's a kid, you need to dumb it down for them, but like sometimes you don't really need to dumb something down for a kid to understand, you know, like obviously okay, this is a bad example because this is a show for like extremely like littler kids who obviously need things dumbed down for them. But how many times were kids watching like Dora and they were just getting so mad that like it was progressing so slow because they'd be like, oh, where is this at? And it's like, of course the kid knows where it is. It's not gonna be like, oh, it's over here when it's not in that area, you know, like it's something that's like it's so obvious and like I don't know, it's kind of a bad example, you know, but I feel like that's kind of a example ish of like a, you know, a kid show kind of dumbing things down too much for a kid.
I feel like Thor is kind of like 50-50 because like the point of the show is for like the kids to interact with it, but they took it way too far. Like you're saying with the dumbing it down, like instead of having to repeat where's the map 87 times, you could just do it once or twice and then like, oh, there it is, and not have people have throw tantrums because fucking Dora won't listen to them.
Or okay, it's not insulting your intelligence. This show only insults your intelligence when you look back on it. But so many people hate the show Caillou looking back on it just because they realize how much of a little brat that kid is. And especially if you're coming from our culture, from three of us, a lot of us look at Caillou, especially as a brat, looking back, because we're like, "Oh, I wish you would have tried that with a different type of mother and father." You know, this man throwing a tantrum because was it that he didn't want to take a bath or he didn't want to get out the bath? I don't remember, but like this man would start tantrums over the littlest things, and watching it back, you're just like, "Oh, I wish you would have tried this with someone else." But getting back to regular show, I think the good point that was brought up was, or like an idea that came to mind was that, you know, it also still kind of covered, I wouldn't really call it like mature topics, but you know, like there was a lot of times where it covered like a lot of kind of like looking back, like when you look back at it, you're like, oh wow, I didn't realize that type of stuff, you know, like when you were watching it the first time. You know?
Right.
Like,
I remember this.
oh, sorry, continue.
I remember this one cartoon. Because I didn't have access to like Cartoon Network or what's the other one, Nickelodeon, because we didn't have cable growing up. But there was this show on on PBS. I don't remember what it was like. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but it's like this animal show where like they put stuff together using letters and then it comes to life. What was it called? Anyways, that was like kind of the premise of the show. Like when they want to build something, they have to find the letters and spell it out, and then it turns into whatever they need it to be. And I remember there was this one episode where they talked about death or like the loss of someone, and I feel like the way they presented like death was a little bit. It wasn't like dumbed down. It was kind of like the realistic approach to death. And I saw like that clip on Twitter like a few months ago, and I don't know, it moves me. Because if I would have seen that as a kid, I would have been like, oh, they're talking about someone dying and not really thought much of it. But once you like now know more, it hits different.
Yeah, most definitely. Like when I think of that in like the context of regular show, like Dom, looking back at it, don't you just kind of realize how much of a good person Benson was trying to be towards Mordecai and Rigby in terms of like trying to help them mature and essentially be proper workers, you know?
Yeah, I mean, now that I think about, because I remember back then thinking that Benson was just the one who ruled, like, you know, the party pooper. Like, Mordecai and Rigby have these like crazy adventures, and then it's, you know, Benson ruining it all. You know, threatening to fire them when he doesn't even do it at the end of the day. But come to think about it, yeah, I mean, these. I remember the pilot episode. Seeing the pilot episode, and you know them going on their first Mordecai and Rigby on their first like adventure. And then it was Benson trying to straighten them out, saying, you better get back to work, or else you're going to be fired. But it pretty much happens almost every single episode, where Benson's trying to at least straighten things out. Trying to straighten things out. But I mean, we have to also note that Benson himself isn't perfect, as some. I remember that was, I think, Excellent. That was like a huge flaw that was like exposed about Benson and himself. I remember. Not remembering seeing like Benson trying to, how would you say, give a better light for Mordecai and Rigby for their futures, because I'm pretty sure they're still teenagers, or at least very young adults at this point in time, at the start of the show. So trying to, you know, stay on with their work, you know, without causing any trouble is what Benson always wanted for it to happen. Because if Mordecai and Rigby were to like act, maybe not act immature, or in general, just if they were to act out of place and do their own thing without doing their work, all of those events, all of those situations where they open up portals to who knows where, or they activate some monster legend that's hiding beneath and stuff like that, wouldn't ever happen. But because they go out of line, Mordecai and Rigby, Benson can't really help them, other than Mordecai and Rigby solving their own problems and such. Which is just something I have to say.
Yeah,
but
I like how you mentioned it, that, you know, like, he's not perfect, because like there are plenty of episodes where you see, like, you know, how you said, like, there's flaws to his character. Like a big one is you know, when Mordecai and Rigby find that stick hockey table, and he tells them, oh, do all your work for the day and then you can use it. But then, like, they do all the work, and yet he still gave the machine away. You know, like that and even Skips, the other character, calls him out and is saying, you know, a promise is a promise. They held up their end of the deal. You got to hold up your end, you know. But I think, like, the episode, when you look back, that you truly realize that, you know, he truly just wanted the best for them, and that's what he had in mind, was the episode where Pops doesn't let him yell at them, you know, like Pops gets mad at him for yelling at Mordecai and Rigby, and tells him that he can't yell at them or else he's gonna get fired, you know. And like, you see the stuff that they're doing to like test them, you know, like all he asked them to do was paint a shed, and instead of simply painting it, they're pouring the paint on themselves and then throwing themselves against the shed wall to paint it, you know. And it's like, who does that, you know? And the final scene is the one that you look back at and you're just like, yeah, he may have like taken the wrong approach at times, but he truly had their best interest in mind, you know, when he's telling them, you know, that you know, he's just trying to teach them how to have a good work ethic, and, you know, trying to basically show them that, like, you know, as much as they can have their fun, real life at the end of the day is always gonna be a factor, and they need to at least learn to be more mature, at least when, like, they're on the job, you know.
Yeah.
Because if I remember correctly, they're high school graduates throughout the show, so it's like, they're, like you said, they're like early into their adulthood, you know. So it's like they're not the most mature, and that's what he's trying to help them learn, you know.
Right.
But it's funny how you mention, you know, like how they can be given a simple task, and yet it unearths like some thing that they have to do by the end of the show. I actually have like a list of certain things that, you know, here was the task that they needed to complete, and here's what ends up happening throughout the episode. The first one I have, the task they were given was simply to just set up some chairs for a birthday party. Realistically watching that, you're like, huh, that doesn't seem too hard, you know, that seems like an easy job that you can finish real quickly. that somehow turned into fighting an evil game boss that's destroying the park. In another episode, they burnt the hot dogs that they were specifically told not to cook, and throughout the episode they try and find replacements, only to find hot dogs that want to eat humans for revenge for them always eating hot dogs.
I saw that one in like a YouTube compilation of like the funny moments, and then when I think it's Mordecai, he throws mustard on one of them, and then the other two start eating it.
Yeah, that's I totally forgot about that part. That's another like that's like one of those hidden things where you're just like, are they low key talking about cannibalism right now? But there is a funny moment where in that episode, one of the hot dogs like eats itself, and he just straight up disappears and doesn't exist no more. There was an episode where they were just prank calling, and that somehow leads to them traveling through time. There's an episode where the park gets audited, and because they're getting audited and they don't complete it by the end of the day, the park slowly starts getting disintegrated. Dom, you brought up what was supposed to be like the original like pilot episode. A game of rock, paper, scissors in that episode almost leads to the park getting destroyed because they couldn't break a tie. We mentioned it earlier. The intern was a Russian spy. There's a sandwich chain in the show that has a sandwich that if you don't eat it right, it can kill you. And then one of the crazier ones, there's an episode where they need a horse to pass a U.S. history test in order to prevent the Earth from blowing up. Once again, simple task, but yet it always leads to the most outlandish possibilities, you know. And I think that was the funniest part, was they called it regular show, like as a way of like being like ironic, you know, that like it's supposed to be just this regular show of people working at a park. What's so interesting about it? Oh, well, anytime they try and do something simple, something crazy always pops up, you know.
I remember this one episode. Like, I think the only episode I actually watched from regular show, it was, they were having like a movie night, and I think Mordecai messes up the DVD by spitting on it, and then that causes like the whole projector to go crazy and releases like this lightning that like ends up reviving the dead. Wow, that was so funny.
Dom, what are some of the crazy moments you remember from watching this show?
I remember they had to clean a limousine I remember they had to clean a limousine, and I remember Rigby bought a meatball sub and accidentally spilled the meatball sub within the limousine. And so, in order to try to clean it up, they tried many different ways, like with how you say, with like paper towels and like towels and such as that. But it's gotten to the point where the mess got really bad that they couldn't actually go clean it up. So what they had to do, if I remember, is use the limousine to go into a demolition derby with a bunch of other limousines, so that they could leave out with a new limousine. And I'm pretty sure within the demolition derby with a bunch of other limousines, they come across like a monster, like a transformer mecha giant made of limousines. And I'm thinking, where does the log? How do we get from cleaning and accidentally dropping a meatball sub within a limousine? And the limousine was white. It was all white, and which made it worse. Oh, yes. So it was very dirty because of the meatball sub. It was all red because of the marinara sauce. So we went from cleaning a limousine, which they could have just cleaned it with like I'm not sure, maybe. I mean, I forgot how you can one clean it, but I mean, you just use some sort of chemicals. It's gotten to that point where they couldn't clean it in time, or they couldn't clean it enough. They had to go all the way down to a huge limousine demolition derby so they could get themselves a brand new limousine. So just so it seemed like nothing bad happened. And I think at the end of the episode, they still. I think meatball sub still ends up falling and like ruining the cushions regardless. So all that was for nothing. Yeah. So the limousine belonged to Pops' father, the owner of the park, and they bring him the new limousine. And I don't remember what else was in the
was it salami or bologna? I don't know, but like the main thing about the sandwiches was that it had coleslaw in it, and he drops it, and it wasn't even like the mess Mordecai and Reed made. He just dropped it on the seat, like below, and then he just goes, I'm rich, I'll just buy another one. So they went through all that effort just for none of it to matter.
Oh boy.
What else do you remember, Dom?
I remember the Four Little Ducks. The episode with the Four Little Ducks, that was pretty insane. There was I forgot what the name of the ducks were, but I believe there was 4 little ducks that were abandoned, I believe, and then it was Rigby who found them and adopted them, and then I think it got to a point where they created a bond. So it was one episode where there was the 4 little ducks. I think it was 4 little ducks, or 5 ducks. I don't remember. And then over the time of the episodes, they started to create more of a bond where they began punching, and it's gotten to one point where I forgot how, but it's gotten to a point where they began to bond enough where they created like a whole huge mecha, like duck thingy. I'm not sure how to explain it. And I think that episode, a specific episode where they became into this mecha duck giant robot thing. I think it's got its own parody intro of Neon Genesis Evangelion, but I'm not sure if you've seen it, Jack. And it's really like 1-to-1 close to the anime intro.
Yeah.
And it's again going from adopting 4 little ducks to them growing up to become a huge mecha duck thing.
Yeah, they got pretty crazy, especially because there's the episode where then where that happens, the ducks have to face off against this giant geese, and like you said, they not only make that giant if you want to compare it to like Power Rangers, the Mechazord type thing, but then they also essentially go into a whole new form with Mordecai and Rigby themselves, you remember? Yes, and then there's also like I didn't know about this because at this point I think we were in high school by this point and I wasn't really watching TV, but then you get to the later seasons where a dome is placed over the park and then they're sent into space, and the finale of like the whole show in general is Pops finding out that he has these like celestial powers and he has an evil brother, and they fight and Pops sacrifices himself to save everybody in the universe basically, and that's kind of like the ending as they kind of show like everyone's life afterwards, and it's just kind of crazy that like that's where this show went from not having like like 1-to-1 storyline to like the final seasons where they still had their crazy moments that didn't necessarily connect, but they had like this overall storyline to tell, and that was the ending. Imagine watching the first episode and then telling someone, the ending of this show is an epic space battle where one of the main characters dies.
It was pretty depressing seeing that episode, but I mean, the ending itself was pretty wholesome. I'm pretty sure you guys have seen it. The ending, for those who don't know, we end off with Pops, I think in heaven, or like overseeing everyone else, and we end off the show with Pops like taking off the VHS tape. So all this time, we have been seeing the whole cast of characters, including himself, in his perspective, just watching it through a television from VHS tapes. And I think it's a little bit depressing seeing the afterwards of like everyone else growing up. I think Mordecai in the after all this, I think he becomes an artist. I think Rigby has a family now with Eileen. What happens else?
Skips continues to work at the park.
Yeah, and Benson too. I'm not sure. I think he has a family though. I think, but he also continues working at the park. Yeah, and obviously they get new members and stuff like that. But I think another crazy thing to look back on is the music that they were allowed to use in this show. They did a lot of
old music and references to old music, and it's just kind of crazy to think that they used a lot of, because when it comes to music licensing and usage in like media and stuff, like you assume it gets like pretty expensive and stuff like that, but yet I wouldn't doubt that this show was making them enough that they could afford using such songs for their shows.
Yes, I remember two specific episodes where music was perfectly implemented. The I Am Excellent episode, where Rigby gets in a coma because he couldn't. What was it? He couldn't eat the.
He was allergic to eggs, and yet he tried to attempt an egg challenge.
Yes, he was allergic. He couldn't finish the challenge himself, so it was up to Mordecai to save him, so he could get him that hat, which was the main prize for eating the excellent challenge. During the preparations, there was a montage, and during that montage, they used Bonnie Tyler's "Hold Me Out for a Hero," which of that specific situation and event of it itself, I think gained that episode an award, it got like what was it? It got an award, and to think that moment got an award is perfect. I think another episode where music was perfectly implemented was Mordecai and the Rigby's, which I think they made a whole song in it of itself just for this one episode. And I thought at first I thought it was a bit cringy, but now looking back at it, it was solid. I liked it. And there was a bunch of other covers. Other people tried to like recreate the song, and it's just as good.
Yeah, and I mean they used like a ton of different songs. Like they used "Don't You Forget About Me" in an episode. They used "We Are the Champions" by Queen. I'm trying to see if I recognize. Oh, apparently they used "One More Time" by The Cure.
Really?
Friday I'm in Love by The Cure. I'm mainly reading out the ones that my dad's gonna recognize. Heroes by David Bowie. There was another one I saw that I thought Party All the Time by Eddie Murphy. I Get Around by the Beach Boys. What else? Dude, this is weird though, because I'm looking at like the list like that they have, right, of like real life songs that were used in regular show.
Right.
I could have sworn, maybe this is a Mandela effect or something for me, but I could have sworn they used "Rock Me Amadeus" by Falco in an episode once, or at least just the instrumental of it. I could have sworn they used that song in an episode once. I don't know for sure if they did though, but I could have swore I remember hearing that song in regular show. Let me see if I look it up, if I could see anything. But basically, I brought it up because it's just the fact that they used all this different music. I think that was another thing that just helped it connect with a lot of different people was, the music it used, and like how you kind of mentioned, there was a lot of times it was just a perfect implementation of it.
Right.
It didn't seem out of place. It didn't come off as cringe. But overall, just just a crazy show overall. That it's almost like a fever dream looking back at a lot of the stuff that happened in this show. What would your guys' final ratings be for the show?
I'll be honest, I haven't seen all the episodes. I think the last episode I've seen, I think there was like a feud between like CJ and Margaret and Mordecai during that whole fiasco. I've not seen the rest of the show ever since that point in time. I forgot. I don't remember why, but I mean, looking back at it, I think I'd want to give it like a 10 out of 10 because it was an absolute nostalgia, trip just going back and looking at these old episodes and seeing how the ending played out, which was a wholesome ending at the end of the day. But I don't know.
I think
I want to give it.
No, I think it deserves like a solid 8.5 to 9 in that range.
Yeah.
A lot of good memories, a lot of good moments.
I would give it like I want to give it like a 9. A 9, solid 9. It was consistent. It was decent. There was like no downfall. There was like no holding back on like creative intent and ideas. The whole show was perfect, and it held the storyline perfect as well. There was no like continuity errors or anything like that. The movie, I'm pretty sure there was a regular show movie that was also solid as well.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, I think that movie was about how Rigby caused Mordecai not to go to college. Correct?
Don't recall.
It might have been that one.
I was it? I don't remember.
Yeah, it was that one.
Interesting.
Wait, let me double check just to make sure. Yeah, it was that one. Yeah. But yeah, there was a lot of crazy stuff, and I think the best thing to do for people like who either have seen it or like watched it growing up or haven't seen it is just kind of to rewatch it, because when you watch it with a more developed mind, I guess you would say, when you're more mature, you can learn a lot from what was essentially supposed to be a kids TV show.
Yeah.
Like when you look at the characters, especially Mordecai and Rigby, you learn so much from them of like what not to do, especially. But you also get to see their growth as humans, or as characters. You get to see them grow and develop and learn to become better people, because there's a ton of examples of both being just terrible individuals in that show. And much like you said at the beginning, I'm pretty sure they probably have a list of war crimes they have also committed.
I'm pretty sure there's like compilations of like the amount of years they would get for the amount of crimes they committed. I don't remember. I don't recall how many years in total they would have gone.
Man, maybe on the next episode we'll have researched that and started off that way. Gio, any final thoughts from you? I know you personally haven't seen too much of the show as well, but any final thoughts?
I feel like any show that goes on for this long and is as successful deserves a high rating. Even though I haven't like seen like much of like any of the show, I would still give it a high rating, maybe like 8, 9. Because the thing with like shows like this is like it kind of like you need serious commitment to stay true to your colors. And based on what you guys said, it's obvious that they did, and they were able to finish it as they started, without giving in to, social demands or things like that.
Yeah, and I think you saying that like especially rings true, because they could have easily been forced to tone down on a lot of the stuff. But honestly, I think Dom, you'll agree with me. In the later seasons, they probably ramped up on a lot of the stuff.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I want to thank y'all for joining us for another episode of Season 3 of the Rule 34 podcast. If we are able to, if no detours await us, Monday's episode will be a tier list where I will provide Dom and Gio a playlist of different wrestling theme songs, and they will rank them. And next Thursday's episode, unless anything comes up, will be our review of Kanye West's album, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. But until then, I've been your host, Jack, joined by my fellow co-hosts,
Dominic, Steve,
and Giovanni. I'm doing well, by the way. We never really got a chance to.
Yeah, you and I have been doing well, but I just wanted to really get into that topic. But I want to thank y'all for joining, and as always, if it exists, we have an opinion on it. Thank you, and we'll catch y'all in the next episode.
I think the best use of music.
You're lagging out. Dominic.
I paused it. I paused it, by the way, Dom.
Oh, that was funny.
Dom?
Is bro dead?
Is bro dead? Hello?
Hello?
Oh, there we go.
Am I still cutting out or what?
No, you're fine now.
Fuck. What was it? What was it talking about before? What specific thing?
I was talking about the music that they use, and I don't know what you were gonna say.
Okay. Let me continue.
3, 2, 1.